button. It says you
there
are
you
live.
go. Now we're live, yeah.
Boom room time.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the third ever episode of the Boom Room. Sasha, take it away. You got the slogan.
Here we go, where we discuss all things boom from different rooms. It's good to be back. It's episode number 3. And today we're going to dive really, really deep into DAOs, decentralization, governance, and everything to do with it. So welcome, everyone. I see we've got Abu Bao, Degeneration X, Matt Haynes. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Carmelo, how you doing today, man?
Doing good. Experiencing some, troubles with internet here in Malaysia. I'm on the road this week, but made it work somehow. And tonight, really excited for our 3 guests. We got some amazing guests from FactoryDAO and bloXmove, one of our first ever advisory clients. Happy to say that because we're super transparent here. So excited for this discussion on decentralization and DAOs. And before we get into that, like and subscribe and do all those things that we always have to remind you to do so that you're supporters of our podcast and everything we're doing at Arcanum Ventures. And I think we're going to cover some topics in the market, see what up the Bitcoin charts and all those good things are doing right now, and speculate a little bit as we're known to do.
Yeah, and then, we're going to follow that up with some latest industry happenings. I think there's been some fun things around ETFs, just, leading off from our last discussion last week. And then, some big companies dropping into NFTs. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and dive in. We've got the charts up here. I've got CryptoRank pulled up. Coin market cap pulled up. And so we've got, not a whole lot happening. I think in the past week, the past 2-3 weeks, we've seen a massive run up. But Bitcoin kind of trading sideways, Ethereum kind of trading sideways. Carmela, have you heard anything crazy around the markets lately?
No, I heard that people were speculating, like always, that there was going to be the Bitcoin ETF news happening, but I'm hearing anywhere from now until maybe January is when we're likely to hear some news on that. Whether it gets accepted, one of them or all of them, I'm not sure. But I think that's the major driving force behind all these things right now. And that's what's driving this sort of alt season. And we're seeing some sideways action and some barcoding over the last week, which I'm more comfortable with, to be honest. Like, I didn't know what to do with myself last week when everything was skyrocketing, and it made me uncomfortable because I'm so used to the bear market. And I'm kind of hoping that it retraces a little bit so we have a little bit more time to enjoy the peace and quiet before everything explodes and goes crazy. But I think I am in a minority. Everybody else is hoping that things pop off relatively soon. So we'll see how it goes.
I'm kind of enjoying this peace and quiet as well. I mean, it's not so peaceful. It's not so quiet for us. We've been quite busy. I think there's been a lot happening at Arcanum. But I mean, before if altcoin season decides to pop off, I think we're going to be a little bit extra busy, especially in the Web3 startup scene. We've got some pretty big moves from some interesting names here. I think Caspa, which is a blockchain that's been around for a little while, jumping up nearly 70%. Fetch.ai, I guess, catching the AI hype a little bit late. And Synthetics, Near protocol. I've been hearing a lot about Near, but there's some interesting moves here, especially around Immutable and Avalanche. But on the downturn, I forget who it was that had a bullish price prediction for Filecoin last week. Do you remember who that was?
I said Arweave, which is similar to Filecoin. It's decentralized storage. And I might have mentioned Filecoin. And this just goes to show that down 13% over the last week. I'm sure it's up more in the last month and the last year with the upturn recently. But I'm not worried about any short-term price action for any of these coins, let alone something as solid as Filecoin or Arweave. So, we can talk about these prices going down or up all day, but it doesn't really matter. It's all temporary anyways. And these are attached to some real protocols that are actually addressing a real need in the world. So I wouldn't pay too much mind to Filecoin being down. Now, SWI, on the other hand, I think we did a video on SWI maybe 1 or 2 months back whenever it launched, and we weren't quite sure what it's doing, what it's supposed to do. There's so many layer ones launching right now. I think this is the one that was built and geared towards traders, and it had an insane throughput, so you could beat people on other chains that are trading. So I don't know how it's doing. I don't know what the initial launch price was, or I think they did a pretty hefty airdrop campaign as well. So I'm not sure how that's going.
Yeah, maybe not so good. I mean, I think last time we checked, there wasn't a whole lot of activity on Sui, and there wasn't a whole lot of development on the network either. So maybe, they're starting to feel the pain a little bit from that lack of activity. We do have the Ethereum daily transactions chart up. I think a little run up in the past week or so. Seems to be a little bit more activity, but in the grand scheme of things, nothing too crazy. I mean, this is, again, Ethereum, layer twos, Solana, some of these, let's say, non-Bitcoin chains. This is kind of what we look to when we're trying to understand if there is a big pump or a lot of interest in the Web3 startup scene, because these are a lot of the native blockchains that Web3 startups typically tend to launch on, around throughput, around transaction price, etc. But yeah, I'd say, kind of slow week, right?
I saw something the other day. I haven't confirmed it, but I think Bitcoin transactions fees, they were higher than Ethereum for the first time in a long time. I didn't really confirm it or anything, but I heard that, and that's pretty interesting if so. And I think I use Ethereum for the first time in a long time this week because I haven't been sending money between wallets because I haven't even checked on gas fees. But yeah, gas fees were a little bit absurd this week. Didn't like that. Kind of reminded me why Ethereum disappoints me. Like, I have a profound disappointment in it, but I still love it. It's my favorite ecosystem and chain. I'm a sucker for that decentralization, which is a nice theme for tonight.
You just wait till Carl the Moon launches a new project, and then we're going to see $200 gas fees again. So, I think that'll happen. We've got, TVL across all chains here, and, nothing changed really. Not seeing a huge change over the past 7 days. Again, Tron in that second spot. I think I've been seeing a lot of news around Tron in Turkey lately, and I know we made that joke around Tron taking over the Turkish lira as the national currency in Turkey. But it seems like, it's making some more moves. I think an article I read was talking about how the prominence of Tron in countries like Turkey has really, really come to be. And, the last thing that you hear in a lot of these interviews with everyday people is the level of decentralization of the networks that they're using. They're talking more about speed, convenience, and fees. And so, again, I think that goes to support what we mentioned before. The everyday person that might be transacting on the blockchain might not be paying attention to the level of decentralization, but we suspect that might come back to bite some people in the butt a little bit later.
I'm not so sure about that. I mean, everybody we talk to in Turkey, I think they don't really care about decentralization. This is purely for remittance, sending money to your relatives in another country or even to your friend, and they don't care about decentralization. They just want to know that it's easy and it gets there.
Well, I think as soon as we see we haven't seen like a corruption of an entire native blockchain yet, due to, like, let's say, like whale direction or whale ownership, have we? So yet to happen, but we'll
like
see.
Sybil attacks.
Yeah, something. We've got L2s, TVL by L2s up here, and we've got again, not a lot happening. I think these standings haven't changed very much, but Arbitrum seems to be pulling away little by little every day, so good for them. A lot of activity on Arbitrum. Very interesting indeed. You ready to dive into some news in the industry?
Yeah, I've been waiting for it. I'm not so much of a chart guy myself. I'm not a trader, but I like news.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about dead cat bounces. That's not my forte. But what I will talk about is Philippines selling $179 million in tokenized treasury bonds for the first time. This is huge news considering the last episode we were talking a lot about the stepping of traditional finance into Web3, the validation that brings, and taking what is known as traditional financial instruments and bringing them into blockchain infrastructure. So this is really exciting, I think. I'd say Rodrigo and maybe the guys from Soil would see this as a bullish move.
Yeah, I'm actually shocked it's not getting more attention. Everybody's talking about waiting for these ETFs to clear, the Bitcoin ETFs from BlackRock, but this is arguably more important. It's literal adoption from a government. Like the Philippines, I didn't even know that. I know a lot of people are using blockchain, and it's pretty big in the Philippines, but I didn't know the government was this happy about using the technology. But here they are.
I mean, you and I are kind of based out of Southeast Asia, and we've seen a lot of progression here. And this just goes to show as well. Singapore recently launched a series of pilots on tokenizing real-world assets in partnership with J.P. Morgan, DBS, BNY Mellon. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot happening here, and I think they're going to be paving the way in this traditional financial step into Web3. So that's super exciting.
Yeah, I've seen some crazy stuff like JP Morgan has its own blockchain, basically. And I can't imagine if you told me that 3 years ago, if I saw that news headline, my mind would melt down. But now it's kind of becoming an everyday thing. We're seeing news like this that would have been so impressive a few years ago, and now it's just another in a long series of really surprisingly bullish announcements that I think it's going to all happen at once. We're going to get swept up in it. People are getting excited now, but I'm wondering what the straw that breaks the camel's back is going to be. I mean, everybody says ETFs are the halving, but yeah.
I don't know, but what I do suspect is that this is what adoption really looks like, right? We've got blockchain or components of blockchain or Web3 infrastructure being adopted into large companies, financial institutions that are using this infrastructure to help improve their own, let's say financial operations, day-to-day activity, etc., using Web3 as a feature versus focusing on Web3 as a product. And I think that's really what adoption is going to look like. And I think that's kind of, the philosophy that we take in designing token economies and doing a bunch of other things, is thinking of blockchain as, for example, the upgrade to cable internet from DSL, something of the sorts there, and what it can improve in your own ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, I always think about this. People don't care at all what they're using or how it works, as long as it works well. I went shopping to potentially buy a replacement computer today, and I saw all these specs that I don't know much about the workings of MacBooks or what the difference between an M3 or an M2 chip is. I just hope that it works. So, I know there's people that like make YouTube videos or they dive into the technicals and they know how to assemble these computers. I don't know how to do that. But yeah, I think people don't know how they wire money. They don't know how the banking system works. They don't know. Most people don't know what Swift is. So I don't think that's the key to adoption. Is people need to not know they're using blockchain. Basically, they need to not have to operate a wallet that's ridiculous and hard to use. And right now, that's not happening. So I think that's going to be the key to wide scale adoption.
It might be a hot take, dude. You're such a boomer, man. You don't know about gigabytes of RAM. Well,
Team boring blockchain.
Team boring blockchain. In other news, Disney launches an NFT platform. And I guess issues at Ape Fest are still going on. I think there's been some lawsuits happening. But yeah, Disney stepping into the blockchain arena. Carmelo, what do you know about this? This is huge news.
I could have sworn this was already news that broke a few months ago. I saw that Disney was I think they announced they were working with Polygon. I didn't know in what capacity, but now it appears they're working with Dapper Labs, which is obviously one of the biggest NFT companies in Web3. I think they were the ones that launched NBA Top Shots, if I'm not mistaken. One of the NFT collections that ignited the bull run for NFTs, whatever you want to call it. And they have Flow blockchain. So Disney is building something. Go live.
I think, I mean, Disney's very protective around their IP. It makes sense that they want to step into this arena, considering that, the world of NFTs is a world very much of copycats, of let's say plagiarism. And so, yeah, like whatever they can do. And then, maybe moves like this from very large corporations that can bankroll these moves is what's going to push regulation along the lines of IP theft, etc., around NFTs. So that's really cool. I like that.
Yeah, they got to do something. They're getting stale. They're making bad movies lately. That's my hot take. Do something original, Disney. Make NFTs.
Is it a hot take? Disney movies have been sucking recently. I don't know. So we've got a new crypto policy being introduced in the United States. And so we've got Vivek Ramaswamy unveils a crypto policy platform criticizing Mixer sanctions. This goes back to, I think, Tornado Cash, a lot of the controversy around Mixers and, what their place has been in the world of financial crime. So, yeah, what's happening here, man?
Yeah, so he's one of the leading presidential candidates on the GOP side. So one of the people trying to usurp the throne from Donald Trump, who's I'm presumably the leading candidate on the Republican side is here, or for 2024 elections. But this is huge. This is huge because the GOP is more crypto friendly overall. I've seen people on both sides of the aisle that are saying we need more regulations, but we need healthy regulations. We don't want to drive the crypto industry away from the US to Europe or to Southeast Asia where we are. They don't want to destroy that because that's a huge advantage. The US should want to control this industry. As much as I hate to say it, they should want that. So Ramaswamy, if I'm saying his name correctly, apologies if I'm not, he seems to be not only the most crypto friendly candidate, but the one that actually knows the most about Web3. I think Trump made an NFT collection, and I would venture to guess that he doesn't know anything about this tech. So I think maybe people are telling him what to say. But Ramaswamy, I think one thing I align with him on is, we saw last year with Tornado Cash and all these sanctions for these people that built what essentially is a public good where you could send money, mix it. And you could argue that this is something essential. If you want to be private, you want to, change your money around. But they say, no, this is for Hamas, this is for terrorists, this is for drug cartels, this is how you wash money. And yeah, it could be used for that, but that's not a good enough argument to say throw these guys in jail and never let anybody do this ever again. We deserve privacy, financial privacy, and that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm in this industry. I think if you do a cash-to-cash, peer-to-peer transaction, it's completely anonymous. It's completely private. The government has no way to figure out what you're doing, and they don't want that. So that's why blockchain is pretty important. But we have the right to be private, and I hope somebody is fighting for us to preserve that right.
Yeah, I hope so as well. I mean, it's a hot topic. There's a lot of hot debate around it. I think I just got to say, I mean, when you use the word usurp, he's trying to usurp the candidacy from Donald Trump. I just couldn't help but think of Game of Thrones because I've been rewatching it. And I laughed a little bit. But I mean, this quote here, I think, is a great example of maybe his take on what's happened with Tornado Cash. And this takes me back to an article, Carmelo, that you wrote after Tornado Cash was essentially sanctioned and talking about how code is a form of free speech and protected by the First Amendment. And in the world of tokenomics, this is really, really controversial, considering that you can automate processes with smart contract code, taking all autonomy away from it. And so, who's to say that burning half of the supply right after minting, if it's automated through code, is some sort of legal infraction? So there's, the thing, I think the theme is there's not a lot of understanding of how to govern these mechanisms yet, and they need to be taken. They need to be, there's got to be a closer look taken at them, because this is the first time anything like this has really existed, or the first time they've really become issues. And so, just some talking points going to talking heads that are trying to create some waves in some public hearing, I don't think does anyone any good. But statements like this, I think, are going to help spawn the right type of conversation that we need to see in this industry.
Yeah, and this argument is nothing new. This goes back to the cryptography wars half a century ago. Way before cryptocurrency existed, they were fighting for the right for, privacy, basically, and the right to use this technology. And yeah, so there's definitely precedent here. But I'm glad to see that somebody's fighting for it. I think whatever side starts to really seriously talk about being friendly to the crypto industry and adopting it, they're going to get a lot of support. And so far, it looks like it's going to the GOP. I think they understand people in crypto more. They understand the need for it, and they're catching on, which is interesting. But I'm hoping that the U.S. doesn't scare away crypto forever, because that would be a huge loss in the long term.
It really would. It really would. And speaking about the U.S. and the controversy around crypto, we're bringing up news with Tether. So they plan a major expansion into Bitcoin mining with a $500 million investment. I mean, granted, that doesn't seem like a lot if you're talking about, the market cap of Bitcoin or even the market cap of Tether. But why is this big news?
I don't know. It's pretty interesting that they're diversifying. Like Tether only can exist if it's collateralized, if it has something behind it. So if it's essentially adding another revenue stream, it's investing in Bitcoin mining because it needs Bitcoin to collateralize what it's offering as a stable coin. So now instead of buying Bitcoin, they can earn it through mining. Obviously, you have to invest in that, but seems like a pretty sound investment. I think I saw something this week, MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor. It's more profitable than almost any stock you could have invested in the last few years. And it's essentially a proto Bitcoin ETF in its own right. You invest in that, you're essentially investing in a massive Bitcoin treasury because they don't really do anything. They're just essentially hoarding Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting move. And considering, like, let's say if Tether is by all means one-to-one collateralized, and the market cap is a reflection of that collateralization. This is not a big chunk of that really, but it's a good move regardless. I definitely agree with it. I agree with a Abu Bakr here, Tether to $3. That's my thesis.
I mean, you know me, I don't really like decentralized stablecoins anyways. Like DAI is the only one that really speaks to me, but obviously USDC, USDT, they're a necessary evil right now, but they're at least better than CBDCs. But I think USDC and USDT are essentially CBDCs right now. They have so much oversight, and then you can actually reverse transactions and freeze money. So that's a little bit scary. Not a big fan of that. So I'm not a fan of Tether either.
Ooh, I
But
didn't.
yeah, it is a sound move.
I guess that shows my ignorance. I didn't realize that was coded into the smart contract, so they can freeze transactions. They can reverse them.
Yeah, I believe in Canada a few years back when they had those trucker riots or trucker protest, they were actually freezing money that was sent and donated to the people that were basically using those convoys of trucks to block off arteries or routes. And they didn't want people donating money, so they asked Tether to freeze transactions, which I'm surprised more people don't talk about that, but it's a little bit worrying. And that's essentially what a CBDC would do. So maybe instead of getting an official CBDC in the US or Canada, maybe they'll just stick with these because they play ball and they do exactly what the government says. And, to be honest, it makes sense that they do that because they want to stay a business and they can't do that otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there needs to be some level of centralization for governments to sanction these kinds of transactions. I think that was my biggest concern with PayPal. I don't know why, but I'm kind of hoping that USDT or USDC is something that's adopted more as a CBDC than something like, PayPal. But
Certainly
yeah,
lesser evil. No.
yeah, it seems like it. And in other news, we've got BlackRock filing for a spot Ether ETF with the SEC. Who knows if that's going to go through? I think there's a lot of resistance here, but it's an interesting one. I mean, we're talking about a traditional financial instrument. I think the first one around Ethereum that could come to market, and that's big news for Ethereum, considering it's, I'd say, my favorite asset.
Oh, forgot to answer this question. I personally hold more USDC. I don't know why. It's a little bit more trustworthy than USDT, but obviously I'm not a big fan of either. Thanks. Good question. Good question.
It is a good question.
And on your point, yeah, I think I'm more excited about an Ethereum ETF. I think it's cool because it really shows that BlackRock is not just latching on to the most popular Bitcoin. Everybody's heard of Bitcoin. My parents have heard of Bitcoin, but Ethereum, it's not as common. I think most people have heard of Ethereum, but they might not know what it does, that it's like essentially a global computer. So it's cool that BlackRock is thinking to launch an ETF here because there's a lot of value. And I think there's more upside personally to Ethereum than there is to Bitcoin. So as an investable asset that might be featured in portfolios for people like our parents' generation, that's pretty exciting. It's really good for the adoption of crypto, but we spoke about it last week. I'm not really a fan of BlackRock either in any of those institutions. So I don't want to let the wolf into the hen house, so to speak, but it's bound to happen. At least it will do some good for crypto.
I hope so. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of BlackRock either, but this is a move in, I'd say, a certain direction, and I'd say based on the SEC's, the SEC's operation historically, like anything that goes against what they want to see is a win in the industry in the U.S. Ethereum, I don't know if this is what you'd consider to be priced in. I don't know what's going to happen in the markets, but again, Ethereum is not an asset that and you or I consider trading actively. This is more of a long-term investment because we believe in the decentralized nature of Ethereum. We believe that it is a fantastic stronghold for L2s to build from, a fantastic network for projects to launch on. And so, yeah, I think, and just, I guess, the decentralization of the node network, etc. That's kind of why we love Ethereum. It's, the Rolls Royce of blockchain networks, I would say.
That's the Kia, man.
The Kia.
Yeah,
Well,
the rap, Team Boring Blockchain. The rap from Team Boring Blockchain agrees with me. So right on.
Yeah. Well,
And
speaking of decentralization and Ethereum, we're talking about a lot of aspects around decentralization and decentralized governance in today's boom room. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring on our first guest. We have Dr. Nick, I believe Nick Almond, who is the co-founder and CEO of FactoryDAO. And FactoryDAO is a very impressive company that builds apps and tools for DAOs. And so they offer a number of services and products for individuals to build their own DAO. And they actually have something on here. I just want to bring it up. This really fun statement I saw: help us launch 1,000 DAOs a day. For those of you that don't know, you can find him as Dr. Nick on social media. He is probably, in my opinion, one of the leading voices on DAOs and decentralization in the entire industry. A very, very bright fellow, someone that seems to be a voice of reason in a sea of insanity. So we're going to go ahead and bring him on now. Dr. Nick, pleasure to have you. How are you doing, man?
How are you, mate? Good to be here.
Doing well. Welcome to the boom room.
Great to see you, Nick.
Glad to be here. And like just seeing we're sort of a DAO and a company. So we've got with Factory Labs and FactoryDAO. So that's one of the.
So the DAO maker is a DAO. So this gets even more exciting.
That launches DAOs. Yeah, it's DAOs all the way down with us.
It's DAO inception. Well, if you don't mind, give our viewers and our listeners a little bit of background around FactoryDAO. I know you guys have been around for a while, and I've been following your content specifically around social media for a while, and it's always refreshing to see your opinion on a lot of happenings, not only around DAO and decentralization, but around industry happenings in general.
Yeah, thanks, man. I've been in crypto quite a long time now, so I've seen a couple of cycles. I'm an academic by background, so the kind of story of how FactoryDAO sort of emerged, it's quite a long one. I came in through physics, maths, and cryptography, so I got into Bitcoin quite early on, but then spent about the next 10 years building organizations and got into organization theory and built a decentralized organization back in 2013 and discovered the DAO the day it blew up. And I've been obsessed on DAOs ever since. So that's when everyone gave up on DAOs. That's when I got into DAOs on that day. So we started life as a prediction market about 3 years ago now, late 2020. And we built a load of DAO tools around ourselves and slowly morphed into a DAO protocol itself. And we've recently set up a company that helps other companies become a DAO, which is what Factory Labs is. That's kind of the genesis.
I remember you mentioned, I think we bonded over our mutual disdain for Discord, and that got us speaking about some of the most useful tools for DAOs and what a DAO truly needs to function, at least like the minimum viable product. So what sort of tools are you guys building that can facilitate this and help build DAOs essentially?
Yeah, so we're conceptualizing ourselves as a kind of modular protocol. So we're starting with these core primitives. So there's a sort of like government utilities, that you would get in a typical civilization. Like you've got your roads and you've got your electricity and you've got the basic stuff to get everything done. That's what we're kind of building, the sort of building blocks, the kind of new organizations of the future are going to need. And largely that comes down to some DeFi stuff, managing the issuance of new assets. So we've got tools for issuing and managing the issuance and economy of non-fungible and fungible tokens. So we've got the tools for a DAO to launch, to get bootstrap its economy from sort of zero to one, both as NFT based DAOs or token DAOs or both. And then so the DAO then needs to control its economy going forward. It's a lot of what we're trying to build there. And then a kind of governance platform that sits on top called Influence, which is designed to be the kind of next era of blockchain governance, uses NFTs as the governance objects, and is very much about reputation and sort of decentralized decision making.
That's an amazing concept. I think we're going to dive a lot deeper into that specifically, but just for maybe our viewers that aren't so well versed on DAOs, FactoryDAO and the work that you do it takes such a hard line in this industry around like, I love DAOs. I love everything about DAOs. I believe in DAOs. It reminds me of one of our fellow token economists. He goes by the moniker Curious Rabbit, who started a foundation called the Bonding Curve Research Group. And it seems like such a niche, specific thing to be 100% bought into. So before we take the conversation forward, I really want to hear in your own words, like, what is it that you love about DAOs? Something that is, I mean, in my own perspective, not fully fleshed out. There's a lot of risks, a lot of moving parts, and a lot of ways these things can break so far. It seems like no one's figured out the perfect formula. What is it that keeps you coming back here?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's been, I didn't think as many people would drop off, right? We've seen a lot of people get hyped about DAOs in 2020. A lot of people thought that was the year of the DAO, and I knew it wasn't, because it was way too early. No one knows what they're doing. Everyone's investing in these, like fiddly DAO tools for like, decentralized to-do lists or something. Imagining some world where everyone's just going to start working in a DAO all of a sudden. And I knew it was like a much bigger job than that, right? It's a slow burn thing. But yeah, a lot of them have dropped out. Like Aragon have just killed their token and winding in their sort of DAO bits. Super DAO died. Everyone's
Noun DAO also, right?
Yeah,
Which
Noun
one?
Noun DAO, like cannibalized.
Noun DAO forked.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's very messy, right? What we're trying to do is conceptualize a new mode of organization, and decentralized organization is nothing new. I guess the answer to your question is I was already pilled on that, right? So I'm interested in decentralized organization, full stop. And I see DAOs as the medium by which we can get that done, right? So it's the way in which we can build new modes of organization, leveraging Web3 technology. And we've tried it for like thousands of years, right? But they always, like, centralization basically always won because we didn't have the right tool set. So I'm chasing that, right? And I've got long-term vision on it. I don't get shaken out by small hype cycles. I'm in for the long haul, right? I think it's important.
And do you think this next cycle, this next bull market, let's call it, is going to be the time to shine? Or do you think it's going to be maybe the next one or sometime after that?
I think, like I've always said this, once you have a year of the DAO, every year is year of the DAO, because it's just just in part of everything, right? So basically there'll be a point where DAOs are at the heart of all crypto ecosystems, because they have to be, because you need to govern that thing in a decentralized manner. Otherwise, you're a company with a token, and then you're in a different regulatory environment if you're going to do that. So I think DAOs are just going to be more and more central. You're starting to see people like just casually talking about decentralizing their ecosystems with DAO infrastructure. It's just how you have to do it. You need decentralized governance. You were talking about it earlier with the DeFi stuff. We've not cracked the way for governing these smart contracts yet, right? Yeah. So if you want a fixed and immutable system, deploy it and forget about it. But the industry moves on. Blockchains are merging and blending and doing all sorts of weird stuff that you have to keep up with. So you need a DAO to navigate the governance of upgrading that stuff. So it's going to be a part of the fabric of everything, basically.
I hope so. I mean, personally, DAOs are one of the aspects of this industry that excite me the most. And I think one of the reasons is because you can see the fruits of your labor, or the design, the concept, or the design behind your concept very quickly. You can see if things work and if they don't work. And we're actually we're in the process of writing a tokenomics article around governance as part of our 5-part token utility article series that should be coming out next week. But, there's so many things to try and experiment with, and DAOs offer this really pure, innovative landscape where we can test theories, we can see if they work. Sometimes the risks are very high. And so with that being said, I wanted to take this question to you because you seem to be maybe the most knowledgeable person that we know around DAOs. And so when it comes to whales, delegates, semi-DAO governance, maybe pure decentralized governance, in your own experience, what seems to be the solution to prevent DAO corruption, which seems to be the biggest risk in structuring these organizations?
DAO corruption. It's an interesting one. Yeah, I mean, the corruption is basically the problem with governance everywhere, right? This is not a universe. This is not a DAO thing, right? Whenever there's power and money involved, things get corrupt, and it's just that's just the way things are. And in fact, centralized systems are very good at like papering over this stuff. It all happens behind closed doors. You don't really see it. We might see the like sort of externalized effects of it many years down the line. It's often a bit too late then. What you see in DAOs is everything basically in real time and transparently. So everyone sort of moans about DAO governance being a mess, and governance is a mess, right? Generally. So for one, just transparency and leveraging this transparency to be able to do more evolutionary mechanisms, right? So actually building in sometimes called OODA loops, like the process of like learning and iterating. So once we've got the kind of level of tooling and the ability to build evolutionary systems, we can start just moving in a direction, learning what's going wrong and fixing it on the fly, and keep constantly updating it. So evolutionary systems, better governance systems. At the moment, we're very focused on one token, one vote, which is a very plutocratic dynamic. Most people don't turn up because there's no point, because there's like this group of VCs and the founders that run everything. So largely everyone's really disempowered and doesn't bother engaging, and largely they probably shouldn't bother because there's actually no material way that they can ever influence a decision. So better mechanisms for bringing in the collective intelligence of a wider group of people will create a kind of feedback loop. So yeah, we're just largely making the systems more robust, mostly just get rubbed to zero. So the major corruption event is the team that controls the tokens inside just dump them all. That's like 99% of DAO death is that. So you just need to fix the basic trust models first, and then enhance your governance practices thereafter.
I think this is a very exciting aspect of tokenomics that Mello and I love. And we've designed a number of economies before that included what we would consider semi-DAO structures or micro governance structures, where we're able to leverage the native token as an ecosystem asset. And so there are mechanisms, for example, on a protocol or a game where someone might win some rewards in the native token. But in order to do that, they need to demonstrate, let's say, skills or knowledge or experience. And all of a sudden, you have a token which is also being used in a DAO governance ecosystem that serves sort of as like proof of contribution. So this idea of targeting your hypo individuals, like who would be most interested in reacting or interacting in this DAO in a healthy manner, let's bring them in. And so this is what I'm talking about in this innovation and some of these concepts, like the Web3 industry, when it comes to tokenomics, when it comes to DAO governance, is really our playground. And there's so much wiggle room to move around. And so I think this is one of the most exciting aspects.
Yeah, I think you're sort of highlighting on where I think it's going to go next, which is essentially amplifying governance power, or the structure of power within the ecosystem, based on participation and based on other metrics besides pure monetary power, pure wealth. And yeah, so you can design the pro-social activity you want on your network and incentivize it, and then let the people themselves govern the policy about how that works. So Web3 gaming is largely where I see a huge amount of the potential for this to break out first. Because that's where people have games that they want to govern.
100%.
I think
for now we're just voting on logo tweaks. You know, governance with bumpers, those bowling bumpers. Yeah, I was wondering. You mentioned something about like the tech's not there yet. This trustless solution, like I think that's absolutely spot on. We don't have this solution yet where we can trust people to vote and have that much power, because you're absolutely right. Until we have some sort of foolproof system where you can survive the DAO death by the team dumping all the tokens. If you could purchase this, you're purchasing voting power. It's very plutocratic, like you said, and you don't want the power to sit with the people that can afford to sway the ecosystem the most. But to this point, we haven't seen really any ways to mitigate that risk.
Well, for me, it's about constrained governance power, in the sense that most organizations don't have this anyone can suggest anything at any time attitude, right? The moment most DAO proposals are like just anyone can suggest, you go to Nouns DAO and start saying they get into football or something, and they might have done it. But the problem was that, the scope of what you can do should be limited to what's safe or on scope for the organization. So I think it's largely just changing the philosophy to be about like gradually handing over governance power at a sensible way. It's like handing over responsibility in a staged manner, as progressive decentralization, we call it.
That's super important, I think. And just going back to your point about like Noun DAO getting into football, for example, this is one of the biggest issues I think I have with what people would consider successful DAO structures. And you go back to something like ApeCoin, which is technically a DAO, and you have, this goes back way before the token existed or the token economy existed. It goes back really to marketing and understanding like who are you bringing into your community under what premise and what do they expect to be doing. And so all of a sudden you bring in a DAO infrastructure and then you have a $1 billion treasury. So what are these people, what's their scope of vision? What are they going to be voting on? And so this is, I think, where, this brings in some misalignment between potential DAO players and participants, which I think it's funny when you think of like creating the perfect DAO. I think that vision has to be there in the beginning. And then the idea that you mentioned about like gradual transition while testing theories into decentralization is incredibly important. It's not like a light switch where you just flip it on.
I think there's going to be just to hit that point, but there's different points. There's a lot of people think like we need to have just a team to start everything off, and that's not necessarily the case either. I think you can have truly emergent DAOs where a group of people who just want to hang out together and share resources don't even know what they're going to do yet. So I think actually that's where we might see real adoption, is just giving people the tools to be able to interact with a multi-sig and say, actually, this is a group of friends with some money to spend. And I think a lot of the time we've just starting on, let's build this huge decentralized society on the blockchain, when I think largely we want these really emergent outcomes in small groups. But you can do it in any way you want. Like one of our taglines is, if you can dream it, you can DAO it. And it is literally a canvas, right? It's a canvas. You can do anything you want with it.
Better than our tagline.
Anything is possible.
I got to give credit to the Wrap for bringing this question up. This was, I think, maybe the last question we really wanted to bring to you, because you are, I'd say, again, like the voice of DAO in the industry. And so in your own experience and your own perspective, what are you seeing around regulations that are coming to market around DAOs? I think there's been some interesting ones around DAO-based corporate entities that have been leveraged for real world asset tokenization, but I'm not seeing a whole lot of traction on like the bigger view here. So what have you been seeing?
I think it's an opportunity for regulatory progressive nation states to come and enable a new organizational structure, and I think some will do that. So there's places like there's the Marshall Islands, who basically copied the Wyoming structure, which is largely what people are using to own property. So you can give up your autonomy, some of the A in DAO, to be more organized and hold property by using legal wrapper structures and what have you. So there'll be nations all over the world will create one of these. It's just a matter of who's going to do it first, and then which of the most the jurisdictional quality is what's going to come in then, right? So some of these small places will do it. Utah have just passed a DAO Act that allows these things to take legal form. We're going to see a huge rush of them over the next few years. Oh, yeah. And largely about a lot of what of the DAO activity will be at the DAO legal nexus, exactly where technology meets legal form and social form. So, and then there'll be some that are just purely permissionless, non-state entities that need censorship resistant, like MakerDAO, for example, and everything in between. So yeah, I absolutely expect the real world asset space to kick off with DAOs governing land, property, and all that sort of stuff in the near future.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the real world asset tokenization. I think you're absolutely right. Like, this is going to take hold very quickly, especially when government agencies, authorities start to see the demand behind this. And I know I've seen so many projections around the tokenization of real world assets, which just go exponential. And so I know this is a great way for getting, let's say, smaller players into industries where they traditionally have massive barriers. I think it's going to go, sky high, and it's got a lot of legs. Well, I guess, Dr. Nick, thank you so much for contributing to this discussion. It's always a pleasure talking about some of these concepts. I think Carmelo and I discuss this stuff like endlessly between ourselves, but bringing on someone that's really working in the field of DAOs has been really exciting. And speaking of working in the field of DAOs, we're going to bring on our next couple of guests. We've got two of the core contributors from bloXmove. And bloXmove is a decentralized mobility company that had its roots back a few years ago incubated by Mercedes-Benz Auto Group, formerly Daimler Auto Group. I believe they were accelerated at some point by Outlier Ventures. They've branched out into a number of different areas, and they most recently have launched a decentralized mobility application in Nigeria to try and bring something that's going to give a greater sense of ownership to drivers' unions in the country. So we've got Harry Behrens and we've got Dayon Ellings to join us. Harry is the, I believe, CTO of bloXmove. Dayon and Harry, welcome, guys. How are you doing?
Yeah, fine. Thank you. Enjoying the brilliant conversation. And so doing fine.
Yeah, likewise. Happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's very exciting to have you guys here. And, our viewers are aware, bloXmove is a company that I think Mello and I were connected with a couple of years ago. And I think since that first conversation, Harry, where you and I kind of geeked out on data, we've been working together ever since. We've been advising bloXmove in, I think, a variety of ways. And initially we had helped structure a business intelligence department together.
Yeah.
And at some point we ended up collaborating on the concept around a token economy. But, I think more recently you've been telling us a lot about this incredible move that bloXmove is making into a more decentralized sort of infrastructure. But before we get into that, if you don't mind, give our viewers a little bit of perspective around what bloXmove is and what you guys have done in the past 2 years and where, how far you've come. I think this has had some legs. And when I think about you guys at bloXmove, I think about people that get stuff done. You know what I mean? So I'm really eager for people to learn about what's happening here.
Well, the story is fairly simple. So the whole thing started, I'm a software engineer. So software in every possible role you can imagine. And I've been around a few years and a few blocks. So then, first time I ever joined a non-small company, I joined Daimler in China. And after getting to know their core business, I was in the service arm of Daimler, so not the metal producing arm, but the service arm, which started off as a financing leasing company. And at the time, they were very, very hopeful to revolutionize the mobility market in China. And I was put in charge of the IT side of that. And that's where a couple of things fell into place, because we saw that mobility is rapidly changing. So your fathers, definitely all four of you, bought his car probably in cash, but definitely he bought a car when he was 18, 19, not older than 20. He's had a car ever since, and he's driving his own car. So that was a generation ago. Now we're about the generation, then came the generation leasing. And now if you look at, I think the youngest here is probably Dayan. If you look at Dayan and those that come after him, I would be doubtful if they even bother owning a car anymore. So the whole thing is changing. People move more, actually. So there's a measure, which is a very complicated word, person kilometer per year. It's a unit which basically says how many kilometers per year does one person move. And that's increasing, especially in the urban space. On the other side, it's very clear that buying cars as your main vehicle, as to speak, of mobility is decreasing. So what's happening, it's becoming a service. It's becoming a transactional service, and it's becoming a transactional service delivered by many, many parties who are independent of each other. Long story short, fragmentation, fragmentation, fragmentation. And then if you look at what blockchain gives you, and if you look at the mechanisms it provides you, it gives you two things. It gives you consensus, which means there's no doubt. Real magic. But then it gives you decentralization. So anybody can just plug in, and all of a sudden, the infrastructure, the network, what's behind your router, what's behind your plug, handles all your identity, handles all your security, handles all your money, handles all your settlement, handles all your accounting, and you don't need contracts for that, you don't need intermediaries for that. So we based bloXmove on these two analyses and built a system where mobility operators can act independent of each other, but can compose their services. So together, like a traditional cooperative in the historical sense of a cooperative, they can basically scale as a cooperative, as opposed to scale in the way which we all know, which I believe is highly dangerous and unhealthy for society, which is the platform aggregation, which was the way of the Web 2. Which is Silicon Valley burns and dumps money, burns market dead, burns everybody out of the market, has one company left standing, and that company then applies a turn of the screws and swallows inordinate commissions, keeps all the value in this one centralized company, and whoever's participating gets nothing or crumbs of the pie. And they can do that because they scaled so extremely well. So what you need to do is you need to scale at the same level, because otherwise you can't compete, but you should scale at a level where the actual providers of the service keep their piece of the cake, rather than just keeping crumbs and everything else going to the aggregator. And that is what bloXmove's all about.
I mean, that's a fantastic rundown. And this is why I think we get so excited whenever we speak with you and we hear about what you guys have going on. It's this shared vision from the beginning as far as the core tenets of blockchain. And so, you know, this is something that really permeates, I think, through everything that bloXmove has done so far. I'm really excited to see what happens with this greater degree of decentralization that you guys are pursuing. But before we get into that, I wanted to touch a little bit about some of the major milestones that you guys have demonstrated over the past year or so. Some of these massive partnerships, I think, with 50 Hertz, with some transportation providers, what you guys have been doing in the energy sector, and some of the infrastructure that you've built using NFTs, known as NFTicket, which is a fantastic platform technology that allows so much. So if you don't mind, maybe just give us a little bit of flavor about what's happening on that side.
Yes, we started off a very Eurocentric company. So we started off very much focusing on Europe, pretty much north of the Alps, so Germany and the surrounding countries. And we basically, from the beginning, still from the time we were at Daimler, we had a leg or an arm or both in the energy sector and with a transmission service operator, meaning it's an energy backbone operator rather than the energy provider that sells you the power, the energy provider that's actually balancing the grid. And the reason that's actually quite funny in a way, it speaks to, you know, how things sometimes just roll your way. I mean, we came out of mobility. So frankly speaking, there is no obvious connection to power grid operators until after you wake up to it. We met each other on a presentation where we explained how we decentralizing mobility and how we using decentralized identities and decentralized transactions, essentially decentralized accounting and payment, blockchain and DIDs, in order to facilitate this. And they were coming from the analysis which we had for mobility, which they had applied to the power grid, which is extremely regulated, extremely centralized originally, but also now fragmenting, because you used to have these big power plants, monolith, and then now you have geographic, physical decentralization, because obviously a solar panel, you cannot stack it. So for solar panels to work, you need to spread them all over the place. You need many, many, many of them. Same goes for wind turbines. So there's a big decentralization coming in the energy sector. Also, because they've come to an analysis of people or parties might produce energy, but the same party might also consume energy. So I'm a big farm in the US and Iowa. So I have methane gas probably, and plus solar to produce energy. But at the same time, I'm consuming energy, and then I'm living in a farm belt. So I got a bunch of farms quite close to me. So why don't I kind of hook up and we share this whole thing, feed in, feed out of power, which is another form of decentralization here. Long story short, we looked at our respective technical approach, which we had, and they were building together with the Energy Web Foundation. And we saw that we have actually come to the same design mechanisms. So that is when we decided, all right, plus there's another very important point, which for any country that is very advanced in renewable energy, being the source of energy, Germany is one of the most advanced in this sector, you have one big problem with renewables. The wind blows when the wind blows, it doesn't wait for you. You don't turn it on. And the sun shines when the sun shines, and it also doesn't wait for you. But if you want that energy, you need to harvest it now, otherwise it's gone. But so you don't have a connection between supply and demand anymore. It used to be, if I need power, I turn on the coal machinery, I burn more coal. If I need less energy, I burn less coal. Long story short, renewable energy without storage breaks the network. Germany is right now wasting tens of billions of dollars because we built the network idealistically. We want renewable. And now we have too much renewable. It completely destroys the planning capacity. You cannot plan anymore. So what you need is much more storage than you have now. And now I come to where power meets mobility, and that's where the collaboration with the energy sector is. It used to be you push water up the hill. So you use electricity to push water up a hydro plant, then it's up on the hill in a lake, and then you retrieve that same power when you need it again by letting the water down again. The turbines generate electricity. So it's store as water up the hill, retrieve as the water down the hill, which is still the main mechanism right now. But the lakes in Central Europe, they're all taken. In come the electric battery of vehicles. One electric vehicle, moderate size, people underestimate how big these batteries are, can actually, if you put it and connect it to your house as a single family household, that thing covers all of your electricity, your cooking, your washing machine, whatever, for at least 3, probably 5 days. That's how much one car battery holds in terms of power. because they're moving 2 tons or 1.5 tons of metal around at incredible speeds. So these are incredibly dense energy storing, power energy storing. That's also coming now because of the changes in mobility. You're going to have more storage than you will ever need if you start using bidirectional charging. So not only charge, but also be able to retrieve from an electric battery. And when it's connected to the charging station, then you can use the batteries to balance the grid. And that is very much where it will eventually go. And this is how we're collaborating with the power sector in Germany, which is, however, to qualify it a little bit, it's a very, 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 very many more varies long-term game. So this is a game that will roll out not in 1 year, not in 2 years, not in 3 years. It'll roll out in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and you need to have a long breath to go for it. So this is where our collaboration with the power sector came from. We pivoted from that in the sense of, okay, if we want to do business this year, the next year, and the year after, we need to focus on something where the ramping up curve is faster. We did a longer analysis, and Dayan knows more about the market now than I do. And we pivoted actually, okay, let's launch decentralized mobility in Nigeria. There's a number of reasons. I'd like to pass over to Dayan for the follow-up on this. And right now, our main initiative is launching decentralized mobility in Nigeria, specifically actually in collaboration with a number of players who exactly represent the pain point which I pointed out, which is they're getting basically screwed by the big aggregators. So there's already a feeling of we need to take back what's ours, in the sense of service delivery needs to be matching the reward, not the man in the middle basically taking his toll and giving us crumbs.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think before we get there, because you actually jumped in front, that was going to be our next question, but I wanted to point something out that was kind of funny. I remember a few months ago, I think when Sophia took another job and she took a step back and the community was losing their mind. I remember people reaching out to me and asking me, what's going on? And I know that one thing you haven't pivoted on is the decentralization aspect. That's been a core tenet from the beginning. So people are so uncomfortable, even knowing ahead of time that this is what bloXmove is doing. Nobody knows what this transition looks like, which is part of the reason why we want to talk to all of you guys tonight. But yeah, we wanted to just talk about that and what this transition has looked like. We ensured everybody that spoke to us that we were really excited about what we heard from you. As soon as we knew and we had a conversation with you guys, we were really excited, and we couldn't say everything we talked about, but now the time is getting closer to, explaining why Nigeria and what exactly is being built and how is it being built and what's the timeline looking like.
Yeah, I gotta say, every time we talk, I learn something new, but it's refreshing to hear this massive vision, and it's even more refreshing to hear that you guys are playing 3D chess. Really, you're seeing all of the pieces on the board. You're thinking about what this looks like in 5 to 10 years' time, which is not something you hear from crypto companies at all in this industry. And Carmelo and I, we talk about this all the time. People are thinking like, oh, I got to get my NFT marketplace off the ground in the next 6 months. But this is the real deal. This is where blockchain and Web3 infra come to solve real world problems. And I just love talking about this stuff. Dayan, tell us about Nigeria, man.
Yeah, I think Nigeria is the perfect bridge here to what we are doing with FactoryDAO. I mean, this is where the real world utility starts coming in. And what we've been doing over the past, well, I've been working on this for nearly 2 years, I believe, since pretty much the start at bloXmove. And first, we needed to build out the application. What we wanted to show was that it can actually work, that we can build a decentralized mobility solution that is different from Uber and Bolt in its core principles. What that basically means is that Uber and Bolt, they determine what a driver can charge to its passenger. They determine the fuel. There's a fuel hike in Nigeria going on since quite some time this year, and that is also what led to this mobility app-based union to get started. And what they did is they started protesting against these fuel hikes because it was no longer profitable for them to drive around in their vehicles to pick up passengers. And this shows the core problem with these aggregators. They determine the price, and thus, if there's a fuel hike, also the profit that a driver can make from driving around. And what we wanted to do right from the start was offer a white label solution or flagship product, whatever you want to call it, in Nigeria, because Nigeria has a very interesting population. Demographically, there's a lot of youth in Nigeria, so the average age in Nigeria is quite young. They're very crypto savvy and interested in crypto and blockchain technology. There's a huge inflation. It was 32% last year-on-year inflation. And people are really open to new technologies. So that's why we started in Nigeria with this solution, to show that it can actually work. We built out this application. We ran it for ourselves for 3 months. And then we actually realized something. And that is, we cannot scale this enough. We are with a small team. We're no competitor to Bolt or Uber. We don't have billions of investor money. So we can't compete with that if we don't think of new solutions, new ways of scaling. And that's when we started thinking, about this grassroots approach. I've seen it with different crypto projects as well, Reserve being one of the main ones. And I saw it with them, that they took a grassroots approach. People can actually contribute or start their own initiative. So what if we decided to create a DAO out of this? The drivers together can run an application like this themselves. They can vote for the new additional functionalities to be added. They can build it out and say, okay, we want to pay a certain commission fee. Bolt and Uber charge 20 to 30% in Nigeria. Maybe they say, okay, we want to charge 5% to ourselves. And that money, we decide what it gets spent on. So if the app is perfect in their eyes, there's no money that needs to be spent. So they only have the basic transaction costs from payment providers, etc. But if they want to build out additional functionality to compete with Uber or Bolt, they can decide and vote on whether or not they want to increase that commission fee that they pay themselves. So they're both the app operator as well as the driver. So they're on both sides of the table instead of actually being on one side. And drivers want certain things implemented and passengers want certain things implemented as well. Both of them care about their safety. Both of them care about pricing, and both of them care about reviews and, quality. So passengers may want to review their drivers and want to have this functionality added to the passenger app. And, that is actually these thought processes led us to the franchise model, having different mobility providers, operators in different countries and different regions operate their own application for mobility services, and having this grassroots approach where the community can actually help grow it by creating marketing material, by promoting our solution to different local mobility providers and informing them about us, So together we stand a lot taller than as a small bloXmove company with a small team. So that is what led us to this DAO transition and what led us to FactoryDAO, because what we discovered is that you need multiple DAO systems, sub-DAOs as you could call it, in order to operate this for the passengers, for the drivers, for the blockchain or crypto community, because they decide their overall direction to a larger extent if we transition to this DAO. And we would need to cover all of that in one total package, which is what FactoryDAO actually offers us. So this is why we're so grateful for this collaboration, and we really see a future in this. I think this explains Nigeria most of all, and also why we started working with FactoryDAO here.
I think when we were first having this discussion a while back, Harry, you were telling us about this methodology behind pivoting hard into a DAO-based structure. And I remember you asked me 3 very simple questions, and it really opened up my eyes. I felt kind of stupid for not seeing it before. You asked me, like, if you were a driver, how much would you want to charge, or how much would you want your fee to be that goes back to the company? And the answer, I think many people would say 0. I want to own all of it. Obviously, I'm my own business owner, like maybe a little bit of something. I want most of it. And then you asked me, if you were the company, how much would you want your cut to be. And, you know, obviously a capitalistic based company with, you know, that's beholden to shareholders, you need to maximize your profits. I would want mostly all of it. You know, I want to make sure I'm getting as much as I can out of setting up this infrastructure. And then you asked, what if you were both? What if you owned the company and you were a driver, and the company was owned by, let's say, an organization you're a part of, like a drivers union? What would you then do? And it was this idea that I think, you know, litters all of the greatest token economies, the idea of incentive alignment, something so simple, yet so bulletproof and robust. And this kind of takes us back to you, Dr. Nick. I wanted to ask you, you know, what have been some of the more challenging yet fun or interesting aspects about working with these guys on structuring these DAO components?
Yeah, I mean, we're planning a kind of phased rollout of some of these things. I can walk you through a little bit of that. I think Carmelo, it was you who introduced us, I think, wasn't it? I think I was on ranting about Uber on Twitter, actually. and he reached out, you need to talk to these guys. And yeah, I think like Uber, for example, they've burnt $30 billion. Like they've burnt $30 billion loss, right? And they've done that to get this market reach everywhere.
And they destroyed a lot of let's not forget, they destroyed a lot of independent players in the process.
Yeah.
The US
they wiped out
forbids dumping. That is dumping at its rawest form. They dumped into a number of markets, burned existences, and then when nobody was left standing, they come in and suck up the market. Sorry when I interrupt, but it sounds kind of, you almost have pity with them. Oh, they lost so much money. Oh, the poor guys, you know. You tend to, oh, okay, the poor guys, now they're fine. No, they burnt that money in destroying whole existences, okay?
I can tell, Harry, we're aligned on our love for Uber. But yeah, no, it's a centralization, right? So Uberization was actually, it wasn't really decentralization, it was centralization in disguise, right? And what I think we need to do is find mechanisms to kind of, like we've been talking about, flip the game back towards the people who are doing the work, right? Back towards the labor. Like we're in a scenario where there's, you know, thousands or tens of thousands of Nigerian taxi drivers driving around, and all that money is going, you know, into an offshore company somewhere governed out of Silicon Valley. So this is exactly the kind of decentralization narrative that gets me excited, right? This is the point of this, is to build new structures that flip the power dynamic back into the hands of people actually doing the work. So yeah, I think there's a potentially big project here that's going to take us quite some time. The first part of it is to start to animate the existing bloXmove community to care about this stuff and get involved, right? So I think we've got ultimately this DAO will become more powerful in governing this stuff, and it's about deciding what the interplay is. Your average Nigerian taxi driver does not care about Web3, what you were talking about earlier, Carmelo. They just want the boring blockchain. They don't even know they don't care about it. They don't want to know it exists. They just want an application that works and that they can govern. That means they don't need to play the game with Bolt and Uber. And so it's both a governance problem and a technology problem. And I think the sort of end game of where we're aiming for here is a sort of open software ecosystem that is governed by a DAO. The bloXmove team are providing the software that they need, as is determined by the sort of the intelligence on the ground level. This is largely where I think actually you could really flip the game on some of these big Web 2 projects, because you have the context on the local level. You're going to find out exactly what the people on the ground level want and desire out of the application that they're using in practice. So really that's what we're trying to do, is build that mechanism. I think you're going to have a community that's online, that understands the token economy, that understands all this weird crypto stuff and needs to govern the token economy. And I think you're going to have a group of people who understand the technology and developers and slowly do what the the context wants in terms of software development and how that interacts with a blockchain protocol like the NF ticket design. And so, yeah, you need these different groups that have the context and focus on these things. And that's largely what will be helping these guys develop in the future.
It's very exciting. Yeah, I was ecstatic to put you guys in touch because I knew there was so much alignment. And that kind of reminds me, you know, Sasha mentioned earlier on your website that your goal is to launch 1,000 DAOs a day. And to realistically get to that number, because I know you've been very hands-on here. I'm learning for the first time, just for our viewers, a lot of what's been going down between both sides here. So I'm excited as anybody. But yeah, I want to hear from you. Like, what do you think would have to happen to have 1,000 DAOs launching per day? So you don't have to, it's scalable. You don't have to be as hands-on. You don't have to handhold as much. You just let people use the sandbox, like you said.
Exactly. So it took me a few years to think, oh yeah, there's going to be 1,000 DAOs a day. That's when we know it's because it basically, because you're using this kind of executable code, you're essentially using factory contracts. You can just deploy more contracts, deploy more smart contracts, right? So what you can do is basically spin up a very custom entity that's basically pieced together and does exactly the kind of, and you're looking at templates of stuff that's worked. So in order to get to this 1,000 DAOs a day thing, you need scalable blockchains because that's a lot of DAO activity, right? So if we did 2 or 3 big launches a day on Ethereum, you know, people would be burning thousands of dollars in gas. So yeah, you need the scalable blockchains, which I think we're getting to now. We've frankly got more block space than humans. So I think, like, let's stop worrying about scalability so much. And start using the L2s that we've got. But then it's about the governance practices that will drop and develop over time. So it's doing it in practice with people like bloXmove. If we can on-ramp a load of Nigerian taxi drivers and passengers, have them provide feedback to a decentralized system that evolves the network, that will, if we crack that, then 1,000 people will just use that process, right? The open innovation will means that it just scales laterally. People will just print them out, and we're reducing the cost of coordination so much that it's basically almost costless, right? You're just paying gas costs to set up a new organization. And that's why you'll just get this explosion of thousands a day, because it's so easy to do. And people will be doing them to set up the Christmas party, and people will be doing them to launch new decentralized networks. And so, yeah, we just need to figure out how to do it first, essentially. It's all a mess at the moment because we've not figured out the practice. But we will do. And as soon as we do, then we'll get that sort of exponential growth in the use of the structure. Yeah,
and I'm hoping that happens because we need valuable use cases, and we need testimonials, and we need case studies. Sorry, that was the word. We need case studies to show that this is possible. And to your earlier point, to show that Web 2 companies, I hate the word Web 2, but you know what I mean, Web 2 companies coming in and using some of these structures or some of these mechanisms because it's valuable and nobody really understands it yet. I think you've obviously understood it for quite some time now, but most people don't yet.
It comes down to, like, you have to see it. Most people haven't governed anything, right? It's like you're trying to sell a governance. Like, you're trying to sell governance to people who've never done it or have any desire to at this point. So it's in many ways it's a tough sell, right? And but it does come down to showing people what's possible with it. So, like, Constitution DAO got everyone excited because we can own a thing together, own a thing DAOs, and people got super excited about that. Even that flopped, right? That just totally failed. But as soon as we get one of these where it's, that DAO worked, and you won't need many of them, and then people will get super excited about it again. So it's just literally showing people what they can do. We're at that point now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's easy to grasp, right? I mean, if you look at the current solutions in DAOs, I see personally that a lot is still very much focused around the blockchain and crypto community. But what we are doing and what we're going to do with FactoryDAO now is very much focused around the average person, right? So not so much to do with blockchain, but the governance system needs to appeal to drivers. It needs to appeal to passengers. So anyone should be understanding or able to understand how it works. And I think that is where it's at right now. That's where we need to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this aligns directly with, our core tenets, what we believe in this industry around decentralization, around equity, around open access for any, let's say, healthy participants. And one of the greatest benefits of having a decentralized token supply is being able to distribute it to people that are most likely to be operating in a healthy manner in your network. And so I'm really excited to see how you guys structure this incentive alignment, how you guys plan on bringing in, let's say, B2B partners on that decentralized side. I think you mentioned much of it's in the works, and I'm not going to poke and prod for information around what you guys are designing just yet. I think I'm really excited to see what happens. But, before we move on, I just want to, I guess, throw a general question your way. How do you feel about this particular level of decentralization within your B2B target clientele? Like, do you believe this is something that's going to be taken off the ground in Nigeria, in a number of places, especially if you consider, let's say, some sort of ambassador program where you would distribute B2B partners parts of the token supply as a day one incentive?
The secret here is, when you say B2B, most people, at least in the Western European world, will kind of flip on the image of corporates. So for corporates, realistically speaking, we incubated in one. This is actually highly unattractive. They don't want this, let's be honest. So you need to ask yourself, who is benefiting? Who would want something like a DAO? Who really benefits? And for me, there's two answers to that. One is relatively uncomplicated. The other one is a little bit edgy. I'll start with the uncomplicated one. Historically speaking, there was always something called the cooperative. Roughly speaking, at least in Germany, the money was controlled by the men in the cities. So whatever market, whoever was selling his wine had to somehow bring it to the city. And those guys in the city, they sucked everybody dry, because that was the one place where you could sell your product, and they made sure you knew it. So the profit stayed on the city's guys' table, and whoever produced the wine was given enough so he doesn't completely die, because the city guy still wants his wine to sell next year, but just about so you don't completely go bankrupt immediately, but nothing more left to the guy who produces it. What emerged again and again and again? The cooperative. So then I like the example of the wine farmers, because wine farmers, at least in Europe, outside of France, are highly fragmented. They got these little lots on the hill. They're fierce competitors among each other, and they will get raped by business if they don't pool together. And then what happens is you have a village, which is essentially one big cooperative. They basically jointly operate. The word is Kelterei, so the pre-processing factory for the wine, which is where they bring the grapes get stamped, cleaned, and they give you the raw wine, which they then brand separately. But more than that, because they're all own bank. So everybody pays into this bank, and then whoever needs a credit takes credit out. So it's the cooperative model in the sense of the noun, the cooperative. So this is one very important part, and this is what in Nigeria, because exactly here, the big aggregators are essentially the city desk, basically sucking everybody dry, and you need to somehow put power to the mass of actual operators so they can have a balance. So all of a sudden, if you got 50,000 drivers in a cooperative, even a giant like Bolt or Grab needs to be peaceful at the negotiating table, and it's no more take it or leave it, little driver, because take it or leave it, then you lose all your drivers. So all of a sudden, you have them by the, where it hurts. That's one big part about why it's needed. Then there's a little bit more edgy part, which is if you think about regulation. I have to admit, disclaimer, 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 I'm a true blood, dyed in the cloth crypto libertarian. So I resent government overbearing, getting into basically every single aspect of totally unnecessary lives. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. I'm not going to say that's the right thing to do. But if you want to get out of that, and if you ask yourself, what is freedom? A freedom that is granted to you is not a freedom. A freedom that is defensible is a freedom. So a freedom that cannot be taken away from you is freedom. A freedom that somebody graciously grants you, oh, you do have the freedom to operate here until we switch it off. You defend your cynicism level. And that is where I also believe DAOs are powerful. Because the moment you go full crypto, the moment you are willing to not go to the choke point of the centralized crypto to fiat exchange anymore, the moment you admit that there is a sovereign nation of software basically dealing with each other, then you have the ability to actually become free in the sense you do it in the way you do it, and there is nobody that can stop you. It's not given to you, it's defensible. And this is where DAOs eventually will need to help those that, like me, just want to do whatever they want to do. And if I want to do it, I don't want to ask for permission. I don't want to be blockable. I don't want a CBDC level kind of, okay, this profile gets switched off. I don't want social scoring on my forehead. I just want to be able to conduct business. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And if you think about what a DAO does, a fully automated DAO, it makes the players sovereign. Sovereign in the sense of the sovereign individual. And again, this is not something that I would consider right or wrong. But personally, for me, I strongly believe in that. So there's these two sides. The uncomplicated one, build a cooperative. So put power in the hands of the individual value creator. That's uncomplicated. And then there's also the one, get independent of overbearing governments, who I personally believe they're overdoing it. We need to cut off some links here and be able to live freely again.
Man, I gotta say, I love this vision, and this is probably the spiciest vision that we've heard on the Boom Room yet. So I have to give you kudos there, Harry. But regardless, I think what you mentioned makes perfect sense, and it makes a very strong case for business viability. And if you start to consider in the loss of traction and the controversy that's been happening in Nigeria around the current, let's say, ride-sharing platforms, that makes this story so much more strong. So I really love it. And I'm really excited to see what happens and what you guys end up building around the DAO structure, around decentralization, and how Nigeria as, let's say, a case study goes. Because I know, since the beginning, you'd been talking to me about a long-term vision and a long-term 10+ year plan. Very excited to see what direction you guys take this in. So thank you again. Thank you so much for all you guys for participating in this amazing discussion.
And looking at you, Dr. Nick, let's do this, right?
Absolutely. Let's build some DAOs.
So much pressure. that's gonna be a nice YouTube short clip right there. Let's build some DAOs. So,
okay, thank you all.
Thank you so much. Before we dive into our next segment, Carmelo, you want to go ahead and plug us away?
Oh, yeah. If you've been enjoying this amazing, insightful, intelligent conversation between all of these scholarly gentlemen here, please give us a like and a subscribe and all of those good things. And we're loving the questions and the comments. I see we actually have a really funny a funny question. So maybe we can answer that before our next segment. But yeah, subscribe and join us. And also, if you want to check out what bloXmove and FactoryDAO are doing, we're going to post all the links after the show in the description. So definitely check these guys out because they're we can't even scrape the surface of what they're building, and it's truly impressive. So definitely check them out. Give them a follow. Support them. Support all our guests. And we got this cool question here. I don't know what to do with it. I'm trying to think. What's the silliest DAO you guys have seen so far? I like the one you gave, Nick, the Christmas party planning, because you were talking before about power and money, and these are usually the things that corrupt governance systems. But when you have something as inane as a Christmas party, I know there can be some flexing and some power plays there, but yeah, like what would be the weirdest use case you've seen so far for a DAO? Any of you guys? Open question.
The silliest DAO? That's quite a difficult question, actually, because it depends how silly you want it to. I don't see enough silly DAOs. I think largely, I think it's like just things like Pizza DAO. Sounds silly, but they managed to get like 350 pizza on Bitcoin Pizza Day. I think they managed to get like 350 pizza parties happening in a night globally, like in almost every major city. Like I've heard DAOs referred to as digital flash mobs. And that's we need silly DAO ideas. That's like we need people throwing them up for off the cuff. One of my students is talking about Duck DAO, and he wants to do like a public performance with where he pays people to leave little plastic rubber ducks around London and stuff like that. It's exactly this and it has a kind of like really interesting and deep. More people into rubber ducks than you would think. This more silly DAOs. Like I've not seen enough. Is my answer to that question.
Someone who needs to create silly DAO. That's a good name for a DAO in itself.
It is. Why not?
I love Pizza DAO. This is such a good use of treasury funds. Everybody wins, really.
I've got one addition actually to this silly DAO question. I personally believe DAOs are being experimented with a lot right now, and I see two things in general that a lot of DAOs do that I'm personally not really a fan of. One is the inflationary aspect that most of these DAOs have. And what we are, the inflationary aspect, meaning the rewards that people get for contributing to the DAO system, they inflate the token amount in the market, usually, come from a foundation fund that at some point runs out, and it's not sustainable in the long run. Mm-hmm. So that is one thing that I'm really seeing. And just shortly, bloXmove is countering that by getting the revenue from drivers in, the commission fees that they decide to pay for development of the app. And that is a circular model because it gets paid out to the people contributing and building out the solutions that these drivers want. And the drivers then again pay the commission fees to different foundation funds. So it's a circular model. And I'm seeing a lot of DAO models that are not doing that yet. They're not thinking for the long run. Second part about DAOs is a lot of DAOs, there's a large issue because we, for example, operate in a mobility market, but you can't expect anyone participating to have knowledge about the mobility market, about what is the right thing to do. They don't have the strategic insight. Someone who has been operating or working in a mobility market for 10, 20 years. I don't know how many years Harry has been working in mobility, but the average person doesn't have that experience. So how are you going to make the right decisions if you have a full DAO system? And I think personally there needs to be some guidance or elections for that part, right? And there's solutions for it. But a lot of DAOs, they let anyone decide, and it's a risk. So I see a lot of DAO systems that operate, and I would not call them silly. I mean, they're all experimental at this moment. But I would say that there is a lot of risks that need to be taken into account before you operate a really good DAO system.
That's a fantastic point. Yeah, Sasha and I, we've built a few token economies and few DAO structures, and that's something we always have to tangle with. How do you make sure that your voters, the people governing anything, have the knowledge to do so? Because you can't, if people are transacting these, let's say NFTs to govern an ecosystem, they're selling them on the open market. How do you ensure that whoever buys that, whoever's on the receiving end of that NFT, is well enough informed to make business decision to lead it in the right way? Obviously it's decentralized and you have a bunch of people dictating let's say the protocol of the platform is going to do, but you need these people to know enough about mobility, enough about business, enough about Nigeria, let's say, to make the right decision to go in the right direction at least. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is what goes back to like one of the more fun aspects of conceptualizing and designing token economies is asking the question, how does this break, and trying to figure out the limitations of what you've built and really bringing that into your DAO structure, which takes me to my, I guess, silly DAO. And I'm not going to actually name any names. I think there's many of them. You guys probably won't be able to guess, but there's been a real big prevalence over the past year and a half or so of these collective investment DAOs, essentially like DAOs that pool funds together to invest into different Web3 based ventures. And so there's one in particular where I guess, after like a bit of a closer look, I noticed that it was very poorly designed and some massive potential for, let's say, what's the term I'm looking for? Conflicts of interest to come up. And so I think that didn't last so long until like somebody kind of funneled funds off to some made up startup. So these are the hard lessons that I think we need to learn in this industry. And for anyone structuring DAOs and you need help structuring DAOs, don't be afraid to reach out to people that have done it before that can maybe help prevent something like that from happening. But I guess on a brighter note, we're going to go ahead and move into our next segment. In memoriam, we've got some big news that's hit the market lately. I want to hear your guys' opinion, especially you, Dr. Nick. I know you've been quite vocal about this particular topic on social media. We are talking about OpenAI and Sam Altman, and here we go.
OpenAI's board late on Friday in a move that shocked the tech world.
Meanwhile, emotions have been running high among employees, with some considering leaving if Altman isn't reinstated.
This looks so good.
Is this really a brighter note?
I mean, no, it's not. But
Nice pan pipes.
we gotta put a disclaimer, like they're not dead. They're just maybe not doing so good.
Song's ridiculous.
All right, so
OpenAI's
oh no, what happened? Here we go. So guys, Sam Altman removed as head of OpenAI. Carmelo, what happened? What's going on here?
Yeah, there was some sort of coup, and there was a board meeting, and they removed Sam and Greg as well, and the investors were very pissed off, and there was some talk about bringing him back into the fold, which would be a crazy 180. And then I think right before this, we found out that Microsoft actually brought them on to save face, maybe. So they're going to be working in-house at Microsoft as the innovation in AI department, or whatever you want to call it. So it's been a quite hectic half week for OpenAI. But yeah, speaking of decentralization, and Nick, I know you're pretty vocal about this too, about the decentralization and the open sourcing of artificial intelligence. So yeah.
I mean, OpenAI is not open. Like not even close. Like it's the exact opposite. It's got a brand problem, right? It's like it's a lie. And I worry a lot about extreme centralization on AI. Essentially, they become the new oracle of truth. You know, everyone's using ChatGPT now instead of Google and going around the sources, and we've just added a nice talking bot in between us and the internet, and that bot is controlled by, was controlled by Sam Altman, and that worried me. It's a very, very powerful position to be in, and yeah, so I worry about centralized AI quite a lot, actually. I think it's I think, you know, the tools already exist to basically collapse the world's labor market. You can replace like so much white collar work with just the current like even level of transformer models. And yeah, we don't know exactly what caused this bust up, but it could be anything from some kind of personal scandal through to this whole safety narrative. Like, I don't buy this, you know, it's effective altruism versus EAC groups or anything. We're not going to create machine gods anytime soon. I find the whole safety thing to be quite an obvious scam. I think, like, with what's dangerous is a huge centralized company collapsing the world's labor market and funneling everything through their APIs. So yeah, and like the fact Sam Altman has WorldCoin as well, which is a huge colonization of global identity, and I deeply despise this thing. This is like it's like Uberization, the kind of stuff we were talking about earlier about how company in Silicon Valley drops something into Nigeria and then, you know, pays people bottom dollar. They were paying $3 for getting people to upload their eyeball data into these orbs and training a biometric algorithm for essentially doing retinal scanning at a distance. Just really toxic behavior. I like this. I find the whole like the fact that we're all watching up close as a boardroom of 4 people decide the future of humanity. I think it's like, that's a bit worrying, right? And yeah, we need decentralized AI, because otherwise, you know, this is what we've just seen at OpenAI, is like watching the future world government decide what happened to us. Oh, right, yeah, there's change of the board at OpenAI that's going to affect everyone in the world. We're not far away from that. So yeah, well, it just worries me how centralized this is. And all Sam Altman's done is move to Microsoft. So actually, Microsoft now owns a massive chunk of OpenAI and Sam. And yeah, now all the AI talent is going to stream out of OpenAI and move to Microsoft. So Bill Gates wins, basically.
Yeah, you made a really great point. Like, I think more people are talking about this than any election, any government right now. And it's essentially like as centralized as it gets. Everybody knows the drama behind OpenAI and what's going on, which is deeply concerning. And yeah, I think it's kind of like blockchain when it first started emerging and everybody started talking about it. And now I hear everybody talking about AI. And I absolutely agree with you. I can't state it enough that LLMs are so far away from, you know, artificial intelligence gods that people are making out to be. So I think this is a scam too, and people are raising the flags. I think it's a way to get a competitive moat and halt development. I know, like, Elon Musk is a big proponent of this because he wants to stop the development of everybody else's AI so he can catch up. And yeah, I don't think anybody actually believes
right?
that.
Well, yeah. It really does really come down to whether AGI is close or not. Like, I've seen a lot. I've seen some people I respect their opinion on this who thinks it's much closer than I. But it could be 10 years away. Could be 30 years away. And if we, without based on evidence, like facts, like I want to see an LLM demonstrating extended abstract thought. I want to see them theorizing new things. There's not even close to that. It's not going to turn on like Skynet and take over the world. You're gonna see LLMs get smarter. Oh, look, it's come up with a new idea. That's interesting, and you'll see it coming a mile off. So I just find the whole idea that you should regulate based on some speculative overnight change in the way AIs behave is foolish and just wide open for regulatory capture, which is just clearly what, like, Microsoft. They invented the regulatory capture game, you know, outside of the oil and gas industry. So, yeah, it's clearly obviously going on. And actually what we need is a very open, very competitive market with massive amounts of small players going into the AI game, because the alternative is a massive wealth transfer. Already we've seen a huge global wealth transfer to like the point it's less than 1% down to 0.1% now. It can happen again, down to, you know, many zeros of 1%, and that's what we need to worry about, I think.
Yeah, and this is already eradicating different job sectors. Like I know a lot of graphic designers that are struggling to get work now. Some of the marketing teams we used to work with at former jobs, they've just been all laid off and replaced with, a ChatGPT Pro account, ChatGPT 4, maybe DALL-E. And it's terrifying. And yeah, I agree. I think you made a post one time too that I heavily agreed with, that why are we trusting a private entity that exists within a capitalistic system that needs to make as much money as possible to train AI, when this is the biggest use case for transparency. We're all in Web3. We all believe in transparency and blockchain. So why not the same here? We should be developing this in the open source, everything. This should be as transparent as possible. Everybody should have a say in training this, because ultimately it's going to be affecting all of us. And I've just been thinking right now while you were talking that this is an awesome use case for a DAO as well, like decentralized training of models, instead of just stealing everything like ChatGPT has been doing.
Not exist yet? I don't understand.
We're looking into it, and we have been for quite some time. So Vitalik himself basically said that the holy grail of crypto basically is DAOs with AI agents governing them. So this has been in the DAO law for a long time. The ultimately, once you've got digital full stack digital operation execution, then you can have digital decision making, AIs, artificial intelligence, deciding the best way things can run. There's going to be a huge AI crossover. I actually think it'll be a huge catalyst for the next bull run. I think what Sam Altman did is force the entire history of human text into a transformer model and pay the GPU costs for it. And in there, you've got like all of Reddit, and all of all of 4chan, stuff like that. And they're surprised that sometimes it says like horrible things if you don't put these. So we actually should care about what data goes in to an LLM. And I think you'll just find huge efficiency through heavy curation of the inputs to LLMs. And I think DAOs are going to be well positioned to broker the incentives. I think everything, the future of the internet is just going to be full of AI garbage now. So there's like before transformer models and after transformer models. Before, there might have been fairly rich data set there, and now it's just like GPT generated mulch. And so the data integrity is going to fall off a cliff. So that this kind of way you scrape, I think the frontier models will get as good as they are in the next year or so. And then it's going to become about heavy curation and fine tuning of embeddings basically on top of those things. So I think that it's, and we've already got the open source ones, like Llama 2 is incredibly powerful. You could do an awful lot for a long time just fine tuning that. I'm really hopeful that there'll be a decentralized wave of crypto AI crossovers that sorts out all the micro payments for use of specialized models and things like that. I think it's going to be where the frontier is.
And not decentralized like Grok, which is being trained off of the combined ignorance of everybody on Twitter.
Well, I actually think that was one of the reasons Elon bought Twitter. I came up with like a few predictions of why he might have done it, and using the data, the fresh data that comes out of Twitter. It is a hive mind.
Yeah.
And like, I'm quite excited about Grok. Actually, I think it could be a really interesting LLM. But again, it's a centralized one, and Elon will be of the mind that it'd be better if loads of people don't come and do this game that he's just in on. We definitely need lots of parallel runs of this.
Yeah, I think a good justification for his push on purging the platform of bots and fake accounts as well is creating a more reliable and accurate data set. So that's a hot take, and I think I listened to recent Bankless podcast talking about his vision in structuring Twitter out, or X, to be some sort of like holistic lifestyle platform that incorporates a cryptocurrency based payment medium, all of the above, basically. So very interesting. Thank you so much
Oh, I was going to say, it looks like some of our guests have to leave soon, but we have one more segment. And everybody like and subscribe and do all those things again. If you've been enjoying this and you want to see, you have more input on what you want to see next week or the week after that. And yeah, before we go, and I have to say, you can't shill your own project because that's obvious, and you can't talk about DAOs. But what are you most bullish on for the next bull cycle? I'm talking tokens and as a narrative, so not decentralization or DAOs, obviously, because we've been talking about that for 2 hours in bloXmove and FactoryDAO. But yeah, and anybody want to answer there?
I'm gonna give the microphone to Harry first. Harry, let your true degen shine.
I think one technology which has been completely undervaluated so far, but with autonomous agents, it's really going to jump forward, is game theoretically motivated and programmed agents. If you basically look at what AI is now, it's all about passive. It's understanding, which is a big professor sitting in his room understanding the universe. So what? What you want is players. And if you look at what game theory gives you, and you put the tools of mathematically programmable game theory in the genes, in the DNA of autonomously programmed agents, then you got some mean little mothers going out there and getting me the bacon. And I want to have me some of those.
Ooh, hot take. I love that. I think there's been some discussion around that, specifically in game development, but not to that extent. I think, more so leveraging predictive models for landscape development and potentially like NPC character behavior, but nothing like so deep as that. I like that.
There was some AI modeling. I think it was a new way to do gaming. I can't remember what it was, but basically you can sign in, you can pop into an NPC, and you can dictate what they do. You can interact with the world as them, and then you can leave, obviously, and they'll continue to do their own thing. But all of this interaction helps train these NPCs that float around this world, and it makes it like a metaverse, basically, that's learning and interacting with itself in real time.
Man, that's a shame. I kind of liked how shitty NPCs are in games. Anyways, I'm going to throw it to Dayon. What are you bullish on, sir?
Well, I'm going to keep it within the blockchain space. And personally, I really enjoy seeing everything that is being developed currently in the DePIN space, which stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure. I think it's more tangible than the real world assets sector, which is also a very interesting sector in the crypto space. Why? Because it's not just about B2B. So it's a lot quicker in terms of adoption, probably. It's more about bringing people together within an initiative and letting them participate, a little bit like a DAO as well, but also letting them profit from the profits of the company itself. So I think eLoop is a good example of they have car sharing. So they do. They have Teslas that they buy, and you can also buy part of a Tesla or a full Tesla, and part of the revenue that gets earned from renting out that Tesla in that city, you get that money from it. And the same thing with Natix Network, which we talked to in the past as well at bloXmove. They have the mobile phone as a detection device. They use AI as well for that. And you detect data, get points for that. You can convert them to physical products if you're not crypto native. And if you're crypto native, you can turn these into tokens and buy a piece of land of the world map from that. And why would you do that? Because everything that gets earned from sold data over that part of the map gets distributed to you as the owner of that part of the map. So it's a little bit like Monopoly, I would say, where you can own a street in your favorite city and get the revenue from the data that's sold over that part of the map. I personally really enjoy that kind of initiative, and I think there's a lot of future potential in that. There's a lot of different solutions. I'm just naming two here, but they appeal to people in general. So they're not just appealing to the crypto community. People can actually understand this very easily. I had no issue explaining these solutions to people that are not crypto native. And that's the first for me, I have to say.
Yeah, we're actually working on a token economy in that space right now that we're really excited about. It's a little bit premature, but we cannot wait to show the world what we've been working on, because I can't believe nobody's thought of it before. it's one of those things that just hits you in the head, and you're like, wow, no, it's so obvious, but no, nobody's talked about it, nobody's done it yet. So we're going to be dropping some news on that in the next month or so, I believe.
Yeah,
but yeah, good answer.
DPIN is super promising. I think this is a fantastic use case for decentralized asset supplies as well. And there's so much you can do as far as incentive alignment. So I love that. I got to look into this this company that you mentioned. We should connect offline. I want to hear more about how I can potentially own the street that I live on, and then maybe change the sign name to something inappropriate. That's my main goal here.
Use my referral code, please.
Dr. Nick, what do you got going on? Tell us what you are bullish on.
I mean, I'm a perma-bull, so I just, I take the long view on this. So it's all up and down, at this point. It doesn't really matter. It's like being part of crypto is going to be, just a good idea to do. Certainly now's not a bad time to get in. I think the same will happen as his previous cycles, in the sense that the majors will run first, and then it'll the usual sort of run down through the sort of contenders to longer tail assets. So I think the contenders will be much more of a feature in the next cycle. I think there's too many L2s. What I'm considering the post-protocol era, because if you're coming in fresh to the space now, there's 100 new L2s or something, right? There's just no normie is ever going to pass any of that stuff. It won't matter. People will probably get their head around Bitcoin, Ethereum, maybe, and then a handful more. The whole long tail of L2s, I think there'll be a huge amount of ghost chains, and they start overvalued, right? So I guess the things I'll be bearish on is things valued in the billions with no humans on it. The value of blockchains is proportional to the amount of humans that are using it, and some of them are completely dead and valued in the billions, which makes no sense. So I think the ones that, so I recently got into Near quite a lot. I went to NearCon and I'm blown away by the quality of that L1.
Yeah,
I think there's some slept on blockchains that will perform well if they've got an established ecosystem. If there's a real ecosystem with real humans that are living and working on that blockchain, I think going into the bull run, they'll be the ones with the network effects that drive outsized returns on those sort of things. I think more broadly, in terms of sort of emerging sectors, I think DeSci is something that we're going to be talking a lot about in the coming years. I think it's slightly cornered by A16Z at the moment. It's seen as a way for VC money to get access to the academy research, and that's highly attractive. And I think there'll be a lot of institutional money that comes into the DeSci space. I think prediction markets are fine. I've been predicting prediction markets for 7-8 years now. But it's going to happen. And I think that's people get interested in collective intelligence stuff that you can only do in crypto. I think is going to have an outsized impact, because I think this thing on the blockchain was a very sort of 2017 thing that people tried to do, and actually I think it'll be this radically new and innovative structure, actually, with the convergence of AI and novel governance mechanisms and things like that, that'll do well.
Amazing. So much to be bullish on. And honestly, I think every answer you gave was very good and very logical. I got to give it to you there.
Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. You've got you've inspired me to look. I was just gonna say Pepe. Just kidding. All right, Mello, what do you got?
Oh man, putting me on the spot. I got to think of a new answer every week.
I mean, logical progression.
DeSci is a good answer. I'm really excited for DeSci, but I think you're right that it's kind of in its infancy. Maybe it's not going to happen that quickly. But it goes back to DAOs and decentralization. Like it is essentially a subset of that. We were about to work with a really cool company that was working with satellite data and decentralizing access to satellite data, because traditionally that's been governments are the main use case for that. They want that for defense reasons, but doing that for agriculture or insurance, there's so many industries that can be disrupted with access to that. So, and then you get into the science aspect of that. Like you can do so many experiments in space, and you can decentralize access to all this academic data, because it's kind of cornered in itself. Like I don't know what's going on in any academic institutions. I'm not part of that world. So I think DeSci is really young, but it's something that excites me tremendously.
Yeah, it's an industry that like drastically needs overhaul. Honestly, I have very little faith in academia after, I guess my own experience, knowing a lot of people that have been through PhD programs, a lot of the bureaucracy and politics of some of these large major institutions, and continue to hear about it. So that's that industry, I suppose, that's ripe for disruption. Yeah. I think personally, I'm very bullish on real estate tokenization, and I'm even more bullish after this DAO and governance-based conversation that we've had. I think, understanding that, Dr. Nick, especially your perspective on these instruments or these, let's say, DAO-based corporate entities that are very, very rapidly being copy-pasted, just based on popular demand. This is taking hold. I think a lot of people are thinking about how they want to diversify their investments. I think there's a lot of people that have been interested in investing in real estate for a long time, and they've been waiting for a more accessible model. And so, bringing in regulation, safety checks, verification, validation, all of these things, this infrastructure that needs to be present for people to feel comfortable purchasing digital assets that can represent brick and mortar. I think this is something that's going to take hold, and it's going to take hold very, very quickly. So I'm super bullish on that, any sort of real estate tokenization play. But you're also at the behest of like how well the token economics are structured. There's a lot of different models out there. There's pros and cons to each of them. It's important to understand, I guess, like what that means for the asset holder. All right.
Is it too late? Is it too late to change my answer to Silly and Pizza DAO? I'm bullish on those two.
Pizza DAO was the right answer.
Got a call back.
All right, I'm gonna change my answer too. Pizza DAO. All right, guys. Well, with that being said, that's a wrap on our show. Thank you so much, both Dr. Nick and Dayon. Harry dropped out. He both figuratively and literally mic dropped after leaving us with his hot and spicy take and his disdain for a lot of things anti-libertarian. But again, Dayon and Harry, you can find these guys in the bloXmove ecosystem, and shout out to your Telegram group, one of the best Telegram groups I've seen, where you can speak directly with core contributors and founders of this company. In fact, Harry, Dayon, and a lot of other people in the core team are very active there. If you think about cryptocurrency, it's this really weird little bubble where you've never really been able to like just send a DM to the CEO of a company. That's possible in the bloXmove community. These guys are making great moves. They've got a lot of fantastic news coming out the door, so stay tuned. Make sure you follow their social channels. Dr. Nick, thank you for coming on board and lending us your expertise based off your experience at FactoryDAO and everything else that you've been working on. It's amazing and refreshing speaking to somebody that's so well-versed in DAO structures. I think this conversation's been very enlightening, not only for us, but hopefully for everyone that's been listening. So thank you so much, guys, for coming on board. You can find Dr. Nick on, I believe, Dr. Nick, at Dr. Nick on Twitter, yeah?
Dr. Nick A. Dr. Nick A on Twitter.
Yeah, we could we'll put all the links below. So yeah, check it out. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of information to sort through all these websites and links and social media accounts. And I know FactoryDAO has a pretty awesome community too on Telegram. So check that out. I don't think you have one on Discord because you hate Discord, but maybe I'm wrong there.
No, that's right.
I know you guys.
It's gone.
Kill it with fire. But yeah, and I hope in the future to see what your answer to Discord, because we need something for that. So I'm excited to see what both bloXmove and FactoryDAO are working on in the future, and looking forward to hearing from you guys in the future. Maybe come on in future episodes. So thank you for joining in. Thank you, Sasha, for co-hosting this.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you to all of our viewers for watching. Again, make sure you like this content if it interests you. Reach out to us if you've got some cool concepts or ideas for future episodes, or maybe even connect us with some cool potential guests we can bring on. And as always, throw us a subscribe if you're feeling it, if you're liking this stuff. We got plenty more coming: on-chain data analytics, investor-based videos, and of course, more boom rooms. So thank you everyone for tuning in. See you next week. Ciao.
Bye, everybody.
Boom.